she used to text first. Now the silence is deafening. Is her lack of pursuit a test, disinterest, or something far more complex? We're diving deep into the unspoken language of attraction to decode why she might not be chasing you, and what that truly means for your connection. Have you noticed she stopped texting first, stopped calling, or seems distant? If she's no longer chasing you, it's not just your imagination. Today, I'm revealing the 7 signs her feelings have changed and what you need to know before it's too late. Before we dive in, I want to know, which city are you watching this from? Drop it in the comments right now. I'd love to see where everyone is tuning in from. Sign 1. Her emotional availability fades first. When a woman's feelings begin to shift, the very first change you'll notice isn't in her actions but in her energy. Emotional availability is the heartbeat of female affection. It's what fuels her care, her excitement, and her willingness to connect. When that heartbeat slows down, it's not always visible on the surface, but you can feel it in the silence between conversations, in the lack of warmth in her voice, in the pauses that used to be filled with laughter or curiosity. Emotional withdrawal happens quietly. She doesn't announce it, she doesn't make a speech about falling out of love, she just starts pulling back in small, almost invisible ways. She stops asking how your day went not because she's too busy, but because she's no longer emotionally invested in the answer. In the early stages of a relationship or attraction, her emotions are her compass. She opens herself up, she gives energy freely, and she naturally invests her time because she feels safe doing so. But when something changes, when she begins to feel misunderstood, neglected, or unappreciated, her emotions start to retreat before her body does. You might still see her, still talk to her, still spend time together, but something will feel off. It's as if the woman you used to know is still there physically, but emotionally she's already somewhere else. This is the earliest and most dangerous stage of detachment because most men overlook it. They focus on what she says rather than what she feels, and by the time they notice the coldness, it's often too late to rekindle what's lost. A woman who once shared her fears and dreams with you now keeps things surface level. She talks about work, errands, or the weather, but not about what's really on her mind. Her responses grow shorter, her laughter becomes forced, and her affection turns mechanical. You might find yourself wondering what you did wrong, but the truth is, emotional connection fades not always because of one big mistake, but often because of small, consistent emotional disconnects over time. Every unacknowledged feeling, every ignored moment of vulnerability, every time she felt unheard adds up. Emotional availability thrives on emotional safety, and once that safety is gone, she instinctively begins to protect herself by closing off. Her emotional distance is her way of reclaiming power. When she no longer feels emotionally secure, she stops giving you the parts of her that made her vulnerable. You'll notice she no longer reaches out first, doesn't seek comfort from you, and no longer turns to you when she's upset. Instead, she starts turning inward or leaning on others emotionally. It's not about punishing you. It's about protecting herself from being hurt again. This withdrawal isn't sudden. It's gradual and subtle. She becomes quieter, more independent, and harder to read. And that's because her feelings are no longer in the same place they once were. Emotional availability fading is the first domino to fall in any woman's shift of feelings. Once she stops connecting with you emotionally, everything else, her interest, affection, patience, and even attraction, slowly begins to follow. Sign 2. She stops seeking your validation. One of the most revealing signs that a woman's feelings have shifted is when she no longer looks to you for validation. In the early stages, when she's emotionally invested, she naturally seeks your approval in subtle ways. She might ask for your opinion on her outfit, value your thoughts on her decisions, or light up when you compliment her. That desire for validation isn't about insecurity, it's about emotional connection. It's her way of confirming that what she feels for you is mutual, that you see her, appreciate her, and are still emotionally engaged. But when her feelings begin to fade, that need disappears almost overnight. She no longer asks what you think because your opinion no longer holds the emotional weight it once did. She becomes indifferent to whether you notice her or not. And that indifference is one of the clearest reflections of detachment. When a woman is in love, your validation is fuel. It reassures her that the bond is alive, that she still matters to you. But when she's emotionally checked out, She doesn't crave that emotional reassurance anymore. You'll notice it in the way she stops dressing up for you, stops caring whether you text her first, and stops reacting to the things that used to bother her. She becomes emotionally self-sufficient, but not in an empowering or balanced way. Rather, it's a defense mechanism. She detaches her self-worth from your opinion because she's already preparing herself to emotionally exit the relationship. There's a quiet power in this shift. At first, it might seem like she's simply becoming more confident or independent, but the reality is often deeper. When a woman stops seeking your validation, it usually means she has emotionally recalibrated. The part of her that used to revolve around your attention now revolves around herself. She stops chasing your approval and starts focusing on what fulfills her outside of you. This can manifest as her spending more time with friends, diving into work, or pursuing interests she once neglected. It might even look like she's thriving, but what's really happening is emotional withdrawal masked as self-focus. You'll sense it in her tone and her behavior. If you compliment her, she might smile politely but without the warmth she used to have. If you disagree with her, she won't argue or seek to prove her point. She'll just shrug it off, because she no longer cares to be understood by you. That emotional indifference is one of the hardest things to accept because it signals that you no longer hold the same emotional power in her world. The connection that once made your validation meaningful has weakened, and now, your approval doesn't move her emotionally. It's important to understand that when she stops seeking your validation, it's not necessarily out of anger or resentment. It's out of acceptance. She has emotionally detached to the point where she no longer needs your approval to feel centered. She's no longer looking for your reaction to feel worthy, beautiful, or valued. And once a woman reaches that point, it's a sign that her emotional energy is no longer invested in maintaining the connection. Sign 3. Conversations turn transactional. When a woman's feelings start to fade, the way she communicates reveals it long before her actions do. In the beginning, her words carried warmth, curiosity, and emotional depth. She didn't just talk to you, she connected with you. Conversations felt effortless because they were built on mutual emotional investment. She wanted to know what you thought, how you felt, and what you dreamed about. Every message, every late-night talk, every random topic had energy behind it. But when her emotions shift, that energy disappears. Her conversations lose their color, her tone becomes neutral, and the spark that once existed in her words begins to dim. She talks less from her heart and more from habit. This shift is subtle but unmistakable. What used to be meaningful now feels mechanical. Her replies grow shorter, her enthusiasm fades, and her questions turn into polite check-ins rather than genuine curiosity. You start noticing she no longer asks, "How are you feeling?" but instead asks, "Did you do this?" or "What time will you be home?" That emotional connection that once felt like two souls speaking begins to feel like a business meeting between two people just coordinating schedules. The emotional rhythm between you starts breaking down, replaced by practical exchanges and routine conversations that lack warmth and emotional intimacy. Transactional communication is one of the clearest indicators that her heart has moved elsewhere. It means the emotional bond that used to make her want to engage, share, and listen has weakened. She's no longer trying to build closeness, she's simply maintaining basic contact. You can feel it in how quickly she ends calls, how she delays replies, or how uninterested she seems when you share something personal. Where she once offered empathy and engagement, now she gives efficiency and detachment. It's not that she's suddenly too busy, it's that her emotional investment has shifted from you to herself or to other areas of her life. You'll sense a coldness even when she's being polite. There's no emotional follow-up, no genuine curiosity, no spark of connection. She might still respond to messages and fulfill her responsibilities in the relationship, but everything feels robotic. That emotional glue that once held conversations together has worn off. You start feeling like you're talking to someone who's physically there but mentally elsewhere. And when a woman starts communicating that way, it means she's already begun creating emotional distance as a form of self-protection. Conversations turning transactional is her subconscious way of drawing a boundary. It's her quiet declaration that she's no longer emotionally available to engage on a deep level. When a woman loves you, every conversation feels like an invitation into her inner world. But when that love fades, she stops inviting you in. She stays on the surface, speaking just enough to maintain the appearance of connection while keeping her true emotions locked away. This emotional, surface-level communication isn't just a phase. It's a reflection of her heart quietly closing itself off piece by piece. Sign 4. She prioritizes her independence again. When a woman's feelings begin to fade, one of the most telling shifts you'll notice is how she starts prioritizing her independence again. In the beginning, when she was emotionally invested, she naturally made space for you in her life. She included you in her plans, asked for your input, and valued shared experiences. Her independence didn't disappear, it simply blended with the connection she had with you. But when her emotions begin to change, that balance tilts. Suddenly, the same woman who once wanted to spend her weekends with you now prefers to be alone. The one who used to call you just to talk now says she's too busy or tired. It's not that she's suddenly discovered her independence. It's that she's emotionally retreating into it as a form of self-preservation. Female psychology operates deeply around emotional safety. When she feels close to you, she naturally merges parts of her world with yours. Her emotional openness allows her to rely on you, to share her time, to let you in. But when that emotional safety starts breaking down, when she feels unheard, neglected, or disconnected, she pulls back and starts rebuilding her emotional walls. Independence becomes her emotional shield. She begins focusing on her goals, her friends, her personal space, and her individual happiness. Not because she's growing, but because she's emotionally detaching. It's her way of regaining control over her inner world after feeling vulnerable in yours. You'll start noticing changes in her priorities. She might become more focused on her career, start spending more time with her social circle, or suddenly develop new interests that don't include you. At first glance, it might seem like she's simply bettering herself, but the emotional undercurrent is often one of distance. When a woman is emotionally connected, she naturally wants to involve you in her journey. She wants to share her excitement, her progress, her dreams. But when her heart starts closing off, she begins creating a version of life that functions without your presence. Her independence becomes her escape route, her quiet transition away from dependence on emotional connection. You'll also notice subtle shifts in her behavior. She starts guarding her time more carefully, becoming less available, and sometimes even defensive when you question her distance. She may frame it as needing space or time for herself, but underneath that explanation is emotional withdrawal. The closeness that once felt mutual now feels one-sided. She no longer depends on your emotional support the way she once did, and she stops expecting you to be her source of stability. That emotional detachment is often masked under the language of independence, but the truth is, she's already preparing herself to live emotionally without you. This return to independence doesn't mean she's cold or selfish. It's her natural emotional response to feeling disconnected. When a woman feels that the relationship no longer fulfills her emotionally, she redirects her energy inward. She starts focusing on her own needs, her peace, and her self-identity. The version of her that once looked to you for emotional connection now looks inward for clarity. And as that independence grows stronger, the emotional bond between you grows weaker, replaced by a sense of self-sufficiency that makes her feel she no longer needs your presence to feel complete. Sign 5. Physical closeness feels forced or rare. One of the most painful but revealing signs that a woman's feelings have changed is the shift in her physical closeness. Physical touch is one of the most honest forms of emotional expression, especially for a woman who's emotionally invested. When she cares, her affection is natural, effortless, and full of warmth. She wants to be near you, to hold your hand, to sit close, to touch your arm during a conversation. Not out of habit, but because her emotions overflow into physical gestures. Her affection is a reflection of her heart's connection. But when that emotional connection begins to fade, the body follows the heart. Her touches become less frequent, her hugs feel shorter, her kisses lack passion, and intimacy starts to feel like an obligation rather than a desire. This change doesn't always happen suddenly. It usually starts subtly. She might start avoiding long hugs, turning her head away during a kiss, or pulling back slightly when you reach for her. At first, it might seem like she's just tired or distracted, but over time, the pattern becomes clear. The warmth that used to come naturally now feels rehearsed, almost like she's going through the motions to keep up appearances. Her affection no longer feels spontaneous. It feels managed. When a woman's emotions disconnect, Her body language becomes guarded, even if she doesn't say anything directly. She becomes physically present but emotionally distant, and that disconnect can be felt even in silence. When her feelings were strong, physical closeness was her safe space. It was where she expressed her affection, her comfort, and her connection without needing words. But once those feelings start to change, that same closeness begins to feel uncomfortable for her. It's not that she's suddenly shy or distant for no reason. It's that physical intimacy now feels misaligned with her emotional reality. Her body instinctively mirrors what her heart feels, and when the emotional connection weakens, her body starts to resist closeness because it no longer feels authentic. What used to be a natural exchange of love now feels like a performance she no longer enjoys playing. You'll also notice it in her energy. When she was emotionally engaged, her presence alone carried warmth. The way she looked at you, smiled at you, or leaned into you said more than words ever could. But when her affection fades, that energy disappears. Her body language becomes closed, arms crossed, posture turned slightly away, minimal eye contact. Even her tone changes. It becomes flatter, more detached. The physical connection that once acted as the emotional glue in your relationship now feels strained or distant, and you can sense that she's no longer emotionally anchored in those moments. This withdrawal from physical closeness isn't just about intimacy. It's about emotional alignment. When a woman feels connected, physical affection is an extension of her feelings. But when she's emotionally detached, her body follows that detachment. She might avoid spending time alone with you, prefer to sleep separately, or subtly create physical distance even in small settings. What used to feel warm and natural now feels cold and calculated. She may not even realize she's doing it, but subconsciously, her body is signaling that her heart isn't in the same place anymore. Physical closeness becomes something she tolerates rather than craves, and that quiet shift reveals more than any words ever could. Sign 6. She stops reacting emotionally to you. Another clear sign that a woman's feelings have shifted is the subtle disappearance of emotional reactions. When she was emotionally invested, your words and actions affected her deeply. She laughed when you were funny, got upset when you hurt her, felt excited when you shared good news, and was sensitive to your moods. Her emotions were intertwined with yours, and her reactions reflected the connection between her heart and yours. But when she starts detaching, that emotional responsiveness begins to fade. The highs and lows you once experienced together grow flatter, and her reactions become neutral, indifferent, or distant. Emotional detachment isn't about cruelty. It's about self-preservation. When her feelings shift, she no longer allows herself to be vulnerable in ways that could open her up to pain or disappointment. Her emotional armor goes up, and she starts responding in a measured, controlled way. She might still hear your stories or acknowledge your feelings, but the depth and intensity of her reactions are gone. Where she once might have shared tears, laughter, or anger, she now offers calm, muted, or polite responses. This is a defensive mechanism that signals she's emotionally protecting herself by disengaging from the emotional roller coaster she once shared with you. You'll notice this change in everyday interactions. When you make plans, she no longer expresses excitement. When you share personal thoughts, she listens politely but doesn't respond with the empathy or concern she once showed. When you achieve something significant, she might congratulate you casually without genuine enthusiasm. That shift from passionate or engaged reactions to flat, neutral responses reflects the emotional gap that has started forming between you. It's a quiet but unmistakable signal that she no longer feels the same emotional connection she once did. This emotional indifference can be confusing because it may seem like she's unchanged on the surface. She might still text you, laugh at your jokes occasionally, or spend time in your presence, but the emotional weight behind her words and actions has lessened. Where she used to feel deeply, she now feels less invested. Her heart is no longer hooked to yours in the same way, and that lack of reaction shows itself in the way she interacts. You might even catch yourself wondering if you're imagining the distance because she's physically present, yet emotionally, she has withdrawn. Another subtle but important aspect of this shift is how she handles conflict or disagreement. A woman who is emotionally connected tends to react because she cares. She expresses frustration, disappointment, or even jealousy because the relationship matters to her. But once her feelings change, she stops reacting emotionally. She no longer argues with the same intensity, doesn't feel hurt by your mistakes, and shows little to no jealousy or concern. Her emotional detachment manifests as calmness or indifference, which can be mistaken for maturity or composure, but is actually a sign of fading interest. Her lack of emotional reaction is often one of the hardest things for men to accept because it's not overtly negative. It's quiet, subtle, and persistent. Where anger or conflict at least signals that she still cares, indifference signals that she no longer does. The spark of engagement that used to define her interactions with you has dimmed, and in its place is a controlled, emotionally distant demeanor that protects her from feeling vulnerable or invested in the relationship in the same way she once did. Sign 7. Her energy shifts towards self-protection. The final and perhaps most telling sign that a woman's feelings have changed is the way her energy begins to shift towards self-protection. When a woman is deeply invested in a relationship, she opens herself up completely, emotionally, mentally, and sometimes even physically. Her energy is shared with you freely because she trusts you with her vulnerabilities and expects that trust to be reciprocated. But once her feelings start to change, that energy begins to retract. She becomes guarded, careful, and deliberate with her emotions. This isn't about being mean or distant intentionally. It's a natural psychological response to protect herself from potential hurt, rejection, or disappointment. You can observe this shift in the way she interacts with you. Where she once shared her dreams, fears, and insecurities openly, she now keeps her thoughts to herself. Conversations that used to flow with emotional depth are replaced by surface-level exchanges. She shares only what is necessary or safe, and any topic that requires vulnerability is met with avoidance or deflection. Her energy is no longer outward-facing toward nurturing the relationship. Instead, it is inward-facing, focused on guarding her heart. This is a subtle but profound transformation. It indicates that she is no longer willing to risk emotional exposure with someone whose feelings she no longer fully trusts or whose connection she no longer values. This self-protective energy often manifests in behaviors designed to create boundaries. She may take longer to respond to messages, cancel or reschedule plans more frequently, and limit the time she spends in your presence. It's not about rejecting you directly. It's about creating safe emotional distance. She's effectively telling you, without words, that her focus is no longer on nurturing the bond you once shared. She's recalibrating her life to preserve her peace and prevent further emotional investment that she feels may no longer be reciprocated. The shift towards self-protection also changes the tone of her interactions. Humor may become dry, affection minimal, and patience thin. She avoids topics that previously excited or engaged her, steering conversations toward neutral or impersonal territory. This energy signals that she is mentally prioritizing herself over the relationship. Her heart is still present to some degree, but it's protected by layers of caution and emotional reservation. It's a quiet form of withdrawal that is far more telling than anger, jealousy, or confrontation, because it signals that her emotional investment has fundamentally changed. Psychologically, this shift is a natural defense mechanism. Women are wired to protect their emotional well-being. When a relationship no longer feels safe, fulfilling, or emotionally aligned, the instinct to safeguard herself becomes dominant. Her energy shifts from giving and connecting to evaluating, shielding, and preserving. She starts making choices based on her peace rather than the dynamics of the relationship. Her time, attention, and emotional resources are no longer available to feed the bond in the way they once were. Recognizing this sign is critical for understanding her state of mind. When a woman's energy is focused inward on self-protection, it's often too late to rekindle the connection in the same way. She is already emotionally recalibrated, and her priorities have shifted. Her heart is no longer fully invested in the relationship, and every gesture, word, and action is influenced by her need to maintain emotional safety, creating a protective barrier that makes closeness and vulnerability increasingly rare. If you found value in this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more truth about female psychology and relationships. Share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know which of these signs you've noticed, and don't forget to tell me which city you're watching from. Your engagement helps me bring more real advice straight to you.